Hello, and welcome back to Calm, Cool, and Crafted. I'm AJ, or you can call me Apple Juice, and today we're here to work on a project I've started and stopped many a time. So this is Kumihimo. Traditionally, it's a Japanese round braid. However, there are variations that allow you to make a flat braid. This is not going to be visible to start, but we're just going to kind of jump in, get to work on it. If this is the type of content you like to have just running in the background, please feel free to subscribe, like, leave a comment, just anything that helps to move the algorithm around. Anyway, let's jump in. So, I started this project about a year and a half to 2 years ago. I wanted to make something for some friends since I run an LGBT alumni group for my old high school, and so I figured making some bracelets would be nice. It has been a long process. I made a couple for some other friends of mine, and in that process, uh, you know, we did some okay work. It was it was fine. Uh, but I definitely would like to have this come together. It's hard because the tension that you have to maintain is rather particular for this braiding, for it to not like shape outwards really weirdly. For me, I ran into just how tight I'm pulling these strings on the side to create the gap between each of the rows makes it much harder for me to figure out what it is that I need to do, and obviously juggling all of these threads is its own problem. But I do like the end result of Kumihimo a lot. It's something that is feels somewhat unique. There's not a lot of people, at least stateside, that do projects with it. Uh, I actually learned this specifically back when I was a kid because my mom very into jewelry making, uh, and she would often buy the class or book, in this case a book, that she would then just hand over to me and go, "Can you learn this?" and then teach it to me. Uh, and it is incredibly rare that in the process of actually learning it would I end up getting the opportunity to teach it to her. So I have a lot of these random skills, and over time I tried to find ways that I could engage with those things and find uses for myself with them. I think it'll be easier to see on the side camera, but this is creating just like a little rainbow flat braid. Nothing too crazy, we're just moving the top row down, bottom row up on the right side, so we're kind of rotating them, I would say, counterclockwise. And then we just, each time we complete that shift, we move over our black threads back and forth. So I would take these, move them to the outside, and then we'll take the inside ones and just pass them off to the other side. Now the problem was is I did not have enough of these like bobble type things to shorten the black satin threading that I use. So they're rather long and unwieldy in this case. So I started working on this to make gifts. I have four of them sitting in a bag that have already kind of been done with roughly the measurements that just need. I have to go through the work of attaching the chain, attaching clasps and other things to fasten those together. But I still haven't done that. And that's a different to do list item. But I thought this has been sitting and taking up space that I could free up for potentially other craft opportunities. I actually have two round braid discs. I just didn't have. I usually like using leather cording on those. I was thinking of maybe selling those at some point at like a craft fair or something, just because I like how they turn out. Um, I've made myself a couple necklaces and bracelets using that, and they there's just the size is really nice as a piece of men's jewelry in particular. So being able to make and sell those, I'd be interested in doing. For this one feels more particular and more time consuming than the round braid ones. The round braid ones, you're usually only juggling 8 threads, where this is 6 up here, 6 down here, and then 4 on the sides. So we're at 16, which is substantially more difficult to just keep tidy and takes longer per row to finish. So I don't think this is something that would make sense for me to necessarily sell. Obviously, it's nice if art can make money, but largely I feel like I don't end up picking up projects for the sake of needing to sell something as an end product. I do find that there are some projects that come through that really work well for the purpose of going, oh, I like how simple this is to approach. It's something that's like a repetitive task in an enjoyable way, where I can really see myself just as a repeat task doing that and making things to sell. There is a really great crochet pattern for a hat that a friend of mine in LA made, and maybe I'll link that in the description if I can locate it. There's a brimmed hat, so you're stitching around a physical brim. I have made dozens of those, and it's like those would be something that, like, in Phoenix, because I believe is working on selling those online. I would not want to encroach on his business. It's his pattern, but it's something that I would consider selling like at in-person markets here in the Phoenix area. And I've made, I don't know, probably 12 to 15 of those so far, and they usually only take me about, say, 3 to 4 hours to finish. So it's a really nice, easy pattern to work up. Allows me to get through a lot of the extra yarn that I have just sitting around in my closet. I have one of those like big Costco bins, like the tubs with the yellow lids. It's full and struggling to contain all of the yarn that I have purchased. So I really should slow my roll, but I have many other projects in progress that I want to finish before I worry about tackling the backlog of yarn that has been sitting unused in my closet. I have a couple craft projects for the FanFest nights at Universal that friends and I are going to that I really want to have together, which by the time that this is making it on YouTube is probably the week that that's happening. We're beginning of April as I'm recording this. But I want to have things in order heading into that, and want to also just have things pre-recorded because there's a lot of commitments on the calendar this month. Somehow April is consistently a very busy month for me every year in personal activities. Work is work, but the personal activities side of the world, for some reason, April just winds up being hectic. We're now getting far enough that I think being able to notice how the tension is not working in my favor here. We have like a dip in, the shaping's weird. This is one where just practice will get me so far, but I just need to find my actual groove. And it's hard when, you work on this project for a brief period, you wind up doing other things, and you come back to it. And then you feel silly because it does not look the same as when you were last working on it. And you can see where I was last working on it when I started today. So we'll see how that continues to shape up. Hopefully I can find some consistent tension as we just get, I don't know, I figured it'd just be nice to finish a couple inches of this while we chat here. I know that, at least for many people, this week was, for some reason, very hectic. I feel like there were a lot of lessons learned in this last 1 week period. It's strange. Some years I feel like it's years of change where I'm expecting to run into a lot of individual things that need to be accomplished. And then other years, I kind of expect it to be a year where I'm getting things done as opposed to changing things. Like in periods of change, I don't expect things to fully settle, just that they begin that shift. And this year, from the very start of the year, just felt like one of those years of lots of change. And sometimes the change is not very difficult. You just, it rolls on its own, and you don't have to really focus on it too much for it to kind of happen. But that has not felt like the case this year. This year's been a lot of introspection of just figuring out where do I want to be, where do I feel like I belong, and where where are my people? Uh, it's it's not that they don't exist. Obviously, there's enjoyable people everywhere, but I like to say that most cities have kind of a flavor, uh, and that's largely built around their culture. The people who take part in a city's culture often will find that sense of belonging a little better, and that's not based on any studies, that is just purely my own opinion. Um, and while I do like a lot of Phoenix, I feel like, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have a real built out culture at this point. Uh, but finding things to take part in and do, especially within the world of the arts, is not as straightforward as I wish it was out here. Um, I've tried looking for things and haven't had too much success on that avenue of hunting for that. So I feel like I like to get the opportunity to travel just to feel out new locations and cities, um, and see where that leads me. This year, I'm going to do a fair bit of traveling. I will always say yes to more travel if expenses are planned for in that sense. Um, Often I feel like I go for amusement parks. This year's no different. I have at least a fair number of amusement park trips with Universal, and then going to like the San Fran area up to Michigan, and seeing what I can throw on the calendar to hit some places, especially ones before they close, like California's Great America. We only have a couple years left on that, and kind of the San Jose area. So it's nice to be able to get to experience those things before they are gone, unfortunately. Uh, just like, Six Flags America over in the Baltimore area. I had the opportunity to go before it closed finally and experience the park at least before it's gone. It's always sad when things end up closing, especially places where people have so many memories. I feel like I would be very sad if one of my favorite amusement parks ended up closing down. Like Busch Gardens Tampa has been a childhood park, and there are looming concerns that it may not be around for forever because of venture capitalist investment or other factors causing it to no longer be as desirable of a park. Um, and we can only hope that that winds up not being the case. I wish I had the money just to take over one of them. I think that'd be a real great time. I'm not that wealthy to independently purchase a large park like that. Uh, so it's nice whenever I do get the opportunity to at least visit some place like that and make my own memories in those spaces while they still exist, uh, and prioritizing getting to experience those things, even if it means tightening the belt a little bit for a couple of months to really make that go. It's hard to replace those types of things. It's not often that spaces get replaced with something that's the same nowadays. And so taking those opportunities where we can get them feels really meaningful to me, especially getting to share them with friends or people that I care about. Uh, but even just getting those solo trips together, allowing yourself to get out there, I feel like for me, I'm a big solo trip fan. I love the opportunity to push myself out of my own comfort zone And I feel like that happens a lot better when I'm solo traveling. Uh, Oftentimes, if I'm traveling with friends, then maybe this is something I can improve on. But I feel like I don't want to, I don't want to say ditch them. It's not that I'm ditching them. But going up and talking to strangers and getting to meet people out and about isn't necessarily the pace of everyone that I travel with. And I don't want to, I would almost say, obligate them into something like that by inviting strangers to be part of an activity that we're doing. Um, Most of my friends who've traveled with me long enough, especially ones that go to amusement parks with me, are aware though that if you're in line with me, you're a captive audience, and I will often end up grabbing people to talk to them. Uh, it's just I like getting to meet people in new spaces and being able to solo travel. Almost everybody, I don't want to say everyone, but most people want companionship. They want to meet people when they are out and about in the world. And we don't want to be alone. I like having alone time, but we still want to connect with people. And so having the opportunity through travel uh, and being alone to just make myself go talk to people. I don't usually have a concern about going and talking to people, but it definitely helps get me more engaged with the location that I'm in. I think one of my favorite trips for that was in Minneapolis, where I had broken up with my previous partner and was just feeling like I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was kind of a rough couple of months, and just trying to figure out who I was outside of the context of that relationship, since it was at such a pivotal time where I was just a lot was shifting, and so I was moving a lot of things around at the same time to better accommodate uh, that relationship. And I wasn't making much, but I had saved up a couple $100 and just decided whatever is the cheapest flight to the Midwest on Wednesday is what I'm going to book. And that ended up being Minneapolis. And at that point in time, I had no idea what there was to do in Minneapolis, but I knew that I'd figure out things to do. Every city's got things to offer, and Minneapolis is a large enough city that if you've been, you know that there's not going to be a struggle to find things to do. So I did a little bit of looking around online just to figure out what things I might be interested in. And I took a red eye flight out on a Friday night, went up to Minneapolis, uh, basically got off of the plane at I think it was about 5:30 to 6 a.m. on Sun Country Air, a discount airline, and just immediately boots on the ground with my bag and went to Minnehaha Falls. Just took the train because the train line from the airport towards Minneapolis and downtown puts you pretty close to that, which is the largest waterfall in the Mississippi. And the park was empty. I mean, it's a Saturday morning at like 6:30 a.m. You may think that maybe some people would be out running, but I don't know, it just was a really quiet morning inside the park, and it was really nice just to get to, after traveling on a red eye, have a little bit of just peace and quiet time where the world wasn't yet moving in the way that I was. Uh, and it was a whirlwind of a trip. I feel like all I did was walk. It was the same trip where, in that same window of time, for some reason, my body decided that we were going to start developing, I guess, heat hives. Don't know exactly. It's hard to fully pin it down. Uh, so it was a messy trip, but I loved that trip. It was such a great time. I feel like I must have been walking about 10 to 15 miles a day because after I got into downtown, which was primarily using the trains, I only walked everywhere else for the rest of the trip. Walked all through downtown, got to go to the Minneapolis Institute of Art, went to go. I'm not a super religious person, but going to the basilica that's in Minneapolis, which historically was the very first one, which is, I guess, a classification of church ordained by the Pope. And so they have a red kind of looking umbrella that is part of that designation. Uh, what a stunning church. I mean, just from an architecture standpoint, it is incredibly beautiful. Uh, there's so much art in Minneapolis, especially. The arts programs there are so present within the scope of the city. You have the large outdoor sculpture garden, which has that uh, art piece that's the spoon with a cherry on it. There's a fountain coming out the top. All in like a big outdoor park, totally free for the public to get to hang out and experience. Uh, there's so many parks along the Mississippi River that are all free. The Minneapolis Institute of Art, at the time, I can't speak for today, but was free with a suggested donation of $5. And it just happened to be such a great trip to, on a budget, get to experience a lot of culture and feel pretty immersed in the city. And I ended up making friends on that trip who invited me back to stay with them a couple weeks later for the state fair, which I didn't understand what that would entail. The state fair is a big deal in Minnesota. If you have not been, it is a whole region of people that are coming to take part in the Minnesota State Fair. Uh, Such a great time. I ended up going back the following year as well for that. And it always feels silly to tell people, like, hey, you really need to consider the Minnesota State Fair. But it's such a good time, and you really feel just how excited people are to have the state fair happening. Lots of great food. If you're a big fair food person, it's a great time. You will probably feel it the next day, but it's really great. I had a very fun time with that. And so this year it was kind of looking at, well, where is it that I want to take things? I feel like I don't have a solo trip. I mean, if I had unlimited PTO, I'd be hopping in the car and doing a road trip. I like getting to be on the road and slow down the pace of travel a little bit. Not that I'm not going to try and still get to destinations, but it's nice to be able to stop along the way. And I feel like in a car, it's a bit easier to make room for those unexpected stops, the things that weren't planned, whether it's scenic views, little diners, and those experiences stand out a little bit more for me. The last road trip that I did, one of my very close friends, Michael, who we had done a road trip the 2 years before that. So this is now we're back a couple of years, and the timeline's probably not making sense to talk through. But this road trip was about a year and a half, 2 years ago that I did this long road trip. It was my friend Michael, a new friend Joe who I'd not met before, and I setting out for 16 days on the road. I feel like I was very nervous to be on the road with someone who I hadn't yet met. He had the endorsement of a friend who's very close to me, being Michael, that he was a nice person. But you just never know how you're going to gel with people or not as you enter into social settings. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's okay. So in this case, it was fortunate that Michael just is a great person and tends to meet great people along the way. And we set out on this 16-day amusement park road trip, all the way from Philly down to Texas and back. We went to the Coaster Rodeo event, which happens in early June at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. I don't know if they even put that on their calendar because Jeff, the park owner, he's a big roller coaster enthusiast. And so oftentimes you'll need to watch his social media profiles for him to post when that's occurring. And boy howdy, what a steal. That is, as far as park events go, that's absolutely on the better end as a cost basis. Like you'll still need to have entry to the parks, but most of my friends and I have Six Flags memberships. Uh, and all in all, the cost for that for again years not terrible. It's not nothing, but it's not an atrocious amount when we compare it to places like Universal or Disney for an annual pass. And for all in, I think the event was 90 something dollars. What a fantastic deal. You could skip the line passes, extra ride time in the park where they close the park down, and you get to stay in the park and ride rides. VIP seating for shows, free drinks in the evening, like drink tickets. You get 2 free adult beverages a night. Just was such a well put together event at an almost unreasonably cheap price. It was pretty astounding. I highly recommend it to the amusement park people because that's really who it's catered towards. If you're a big amusement park person, that's an event worth your time. Uh, but getting to be on the road for 16 days, I remember getting back home because at the same time, I sing in a men's choir. I had just joined at that time a couple months prior, and they were doing a tour in the Midwest, and I was doing this big road trip and texting them along the way while they were texting photos in the group chat of where they were at and what they were up to. And I remember once everyone made it back into town, we got together as just like a season closing hang to just do some bowling. And I remember how most of the people came up to me and just would say, "You've got to be exhausted," because I had gotten back within the last like day or two. And you would think being on the road for that length of time, 16 days, we put, I think, 4,000 miles on my friend's car. We did, depending on how you categorize parks, but unique destinations along the way for that purpose of 21 total parks, where many days had small stops at a collection of whether it's family entertainment centers or just small parks. There are a lot of small parks like ZDTs in Texas that they just have, 1 or 2 rides, but it's nice to stop in and get to support these smaller locations. What you can't see is behind the camera is actually my collection of just pins from the parks that I've been to. I figured that was probably the easiest thing to capture. And that trip, I just made a separate board for. It was enough parks. I was like, well, we'll just have this be a whole separate set of pins. I still have all the other ones for all the other parks that I have done. But like that trip, but that one, I keep it as a whole separate set of pins, and so it's just nice to get to look over that one trip in particular. And I felt so rejuvenated after that trip. Uh, Even though it's just living out of a bag. We didn't. It wasn't until we made it to Texas that we had the opportunity to even do laundry in particular. Uh, but seeing so much of the U.S., getting to drive through it, was so cool. I think that probably the states that surprised me the most were Arkansas. We stayed in Eureka Springs for one night. It was actually the night before their Pride celebration, so we just missed that. But just the Ozarks broadly were so stunning. I really was taken aback by how nice that area of the country was, because I didn't really have any mental reference images for that area. I haven't consumed much media that has that as setting. And getting to drive through that area of the country, we were to go from Branson, Missouri, where Silver Dollar City is, down into Arkansas. The route that we ended up taking for Eureka Springs and then connecting down so we could go to uh, oh, what is the name of that one? I wanted to say Wild Adventure, but there's an amusement park in Arkansas, and Magic Springs. There we go. Heading to Magic Springs actually had us taking the scenic state route, which puts you through the mountains, and it was like, this is really beautiful. Some scenic routes in some states, while they're nice, don't provide a ton of opportunity for views, and I felt like there were enough cutouts from the trees on that specific highway's drive that the times where you would get the views out from the trees, it just felt like you were in a different place altogether. Whether you're up near the tops of mountains and getting to look out over just the rolling hills covered in trees, or when you're down next to rivers and getting to see small farms or other things set up through the woods, it was really a great area to get to drive around and just experience that I was not expecting. And then you hit the Texas border, and then it was just not the same. It immediately turned shades more towards yellow and brown. It almost felt jarring to cross the state line, but certainly there's some areas of Texas that are very pretty. I don't know that I got the chance to bump into them on our drive. We went down through Dallas and then went all the way down to San Antonio, then up towards Houston. I did like Kemah, which kind of near Galveston, which I know is very much a touristy area. I think it's about 30 to 40 minutes away from Galveston. Because we went to Kemah Boardwalk, and that area was really cute. I definitely liked the personality that the area had for itself. Kind of had its own sense of identity in and among everything else that it was near. And I at least remember that one more fondly. I feel like I need to go back to moving along in that, like, where we ended up going. I have not had the opportunity to spend more than just a couple hours, which we did during that road trip, out in Louisiana, but really like New Orleans. Would love to get to go back and actually spend some time exploring and experiencing that more. Downtown area, I was like, this is great. There's a lot of really cool culture that is present in New Orleans that I think deserves its own trip from me to go and experience. I don't know if people have suggestions of other places that maybe are a little off of the beaten path. Not that New Orleans is off the beaten path, but I like getting to add to itineraries. So if I'm going to travel somewhere, I like getting a road trip if I can. I love getting to find oddball places that kind of stand out. I know here in Arizona, depending on where you were traveling, a lot of people would probably throw out Bisbee, a small mountain town, kind of one road loop, very artsy small town with a very strong queer population, if that's something that draws you towards it. I know that their Pride every year brings in quite a lot of people from Phoenix to go out and celebrate. And I still haven't even made it there. Like, I need to go out there, go to Tombstone, go see some of the places that contribute into Arizona's weird and unique set of towns. Because up north, you've got places like Jerome or Cottonwood. The Verde Valley, broadly speaking, just has a lot of interesting places. Obviously Sedona, but Sedona is very well known as a tourist location. I do need to get to Williams. I have not made it on that Alpine coaster. It opened just a couple years ago. and I still haven't made it. I've gone to the Grand Canyon several times since then, but I've not detoured that little bit out of the way to go to Williams. So that's that needs to happen at some point. Uh, but there's certainly plenty of things to occupy our time. Coming back to the idea of doing things before they're gone, one of the places that I wanted to get to do is up north. There's the Arizona Falls. I think it's the Grand Falls, and uh, seasonally, in when snow melt would occur, you would wind up having these very large waterfalls in a specific area of northern Arizona. It's like northeast of Flagstaff for people who know Arizona's map. Uh, and I missed that window to preserve the landscape, which is a very valid reason to close access. They ended up closing it to the public to preserve the habitats. I have not checked to see if that's reopened, but I've assumed not. But that's a place I would have really liked to have seen before it became inaccessible for preservation. I think the my other weird fact would be that obviously when you think of the London Bridge, you think it's probably in London, which is true. The Tower Bridge is there, but the old London Bridge, the pieces of it got purchased and got reassembled in Havasu City. And so last year, I was going to Vegas, and I'd never been. I was just driving. I booked myself some extra time on the drive to get to detour out to Havasu City. A cute little town. It's not far off of the route to go to Vegas. Right on the Colorado River, and it's the London Bridge. It's very funny to get your photo. I think somewhere I can probably throw the photo one of these directions on screen of the London Bridge sign. And for friends who just didn't know where I was going, it was entertaining to get to confuse them for maybe all of a couple minutes. And it's just a pretty area of the state. Very, very rocky, feels a little bit wild out in that area of Arizona. Because at that point, you're kind of on the border with California, while also being very close to the border with Nevada, north of you. So it puts you in this little triangle of areas separated by the natural landscapes. And that makes it feel like it has just a weird identity. And I like that about it. It's a place I'd definitely go back to at some point. Well, we're making some good progress on this. I think that's why I like doing Kumihimo. Sometimes it's just nice to have crafts that don't require precision in the same way. Obviously, maintaining a certain amount of tension is, you could say, is precision, but it's not as precise as like we were doing last time with embroidery, where I don't want to stab my own hand. This is just getting to switch things back and forth, and I think as a kid, this was a nice and easy craft where I could see things work up, even though I had no concept of what to do with it. Lord have mercy. But nice and easy craft project for a kid, even though as a kid I had no idea what to do with this craft. I think I made... So there's a different pattern types in the book that my mom had purchased for me that I just was trying out. And so one of those was called a hollow round braid, where all of the strands were black except for two. I think it was two. That way we kind of create a windowed pattern, and so choosing a variegated satin cord, it would shift colors as you made it through the different working areas, which I thought turned out okay. I don't know where that thing wound up. I didn't make it for me. I just gave it to my mom and let it be what it was going to be. I certainly prefer what I've done with leather since then, just for having something that feels neutral in terms of what you could wear it with. It doesn't bump into anything. I don't need to worry about this being something I couldn't wear with whatever it is that I'm wearing. I do need to find something better though than E6000. I feel like I've had 3 or 4 pieces of jewelry that I've made over the last several months. Uh, just suddenly, the glue, which is E6000, is kind of like a more flexible glue, which helps for things like this, just fall apart. Things just come right out of the various end caps or things that I fasten them into. So I need to figure out how to fix that. I don't know. Uh, I actually just bought some material to work on another project, which I'll end up probably working on during one of these videos. So I went to Bead World, which is like a local bead shop here in Phoenix, and was talking with one of the gals there about the project because one of the sections needs to be fitted into some end caps and glued. That way, you can actually connect the chain in because it's called snake chain. It doesn't have any openings, so it's not like loops that are you can connect into externally. It's more like a shell that has interior loops that connect to one another. So it creates a really cool cord that's a solid chain, but that means that I can't use like a ring to fasten it. I have to use an end cap to then give me a place that I can connect from uh, to connect it into the larger jewelry piece. And I asked her, is there anything better? She said, I've been having the same problem and people swear by E6000 and I cannot get my things to last forever. And I don't know if that's maybe just the Phoenix heat or the fact that I sweat buckets whenever I go anywhere, and maybe I shouldn't be wearing jewelry if I'm going to be sweating in it, but then I can't wear jewelry. So I need to find something better and do some repairs on my existing jewelry because there's a lot of things that I've made that I do love to wear, and partly it's that I've worn them so much that that probably also has worn down the glue. But would love for them to have lasted longer. So they've been sitting aside in a drawer as my replace activity. If I need to get back on the horse of fixing these things, that I get to wear them. And so one of them is one of those leather corded necklaces. I had found I don't know if I want to call it a charm. Yeah, that's probably the appropriate term. It just was large, 2 or 3 inches, of a brass patinaed ginkgo leaf. And man, I wore that necklace constantly because I feel like the brassy color went with so much of what's in my wardrobe, especially sitting next to leather. It just complemented itself very nicely. So I love getting to wear that thing. I had also used Kumihimo to make bracelets for my D&D group. This was back a couple years ago. I think I did for Christmas. And I had picked out colored leathers that matched the kind of color palette of the characters themselves. Added some charms, but just made some round braids that I felt evoked the idea of how the character played in my mind. Uh, and so I've gotten to make use of at least this skill set. Not that it's a super deep one necessarily at the level that I'm doing it, but the traditional craftsmen who use this make some incredible works. It's really stunning. They're working with far more strands. If they're doing the flat braiding, I would say like this, but that feels almost rude to the people who do it because they are working with much, much larger sections on like wooden equipment that they're making almost tapestry. So taking a pattern like this, and depending on how you cross and hand things off, you wind up with some very intricate and very beautiful designs using silks. And to keep the silk looking nice, you kind of need to, oops, you need to rotate the silk as you're working it to create the nice flat threaded look, because if you twist it, then silk is very visible. You can see the fibers. Um, so I've wanted to do something with silk. I haven't quite found any ideas that grab me. I feel like a lot of my crafting runs on an inspiration basis. I need to see something to go, oh, I now know what I can do. Um, and I will often buy individual items. This might not be smart of me, but I hold on to them for when that idea hits me. There's something where, like, probably the next video we'll be working on this project. I bought a, I don't even want to call it a charm. It's almost like a centerpiece for a necklace. It has a top loop, and there's 7 connecting loops on the bottom of this with a spider web kind of in the middle and a larger loop at the top. And trying to figure out what to use that for. I'm like, I like the idea of this thing a lot. I don't know what I can do with this, but I know I want this thing, and in case they don't sell it anymore, I should buy it now. I don't know, it was like $3 or something for just the. It was like a gold plated or brass, maybe plated steel, and I was sitting in there for, I want to say 6 months. It's been a hot minute, and getting to where we were thinking about costumes and things for the FanFest nights at Universal. Finally, I was like, I know where this could go. I now have an idea. We're gonna see if we can work with it, and we'll see. We'll see if I end up making some content about it or not. But I'm excited to try this idea, because while I have done some jewelry making before, I usually have had some sort of a reference that is a little bit more matching to what it is I'm trying to do, I feel. Um, it's not true of everything. Some stuff is simple enough that it doesn't need it. You can just work from what's in your mind. But I feel like for the structure of this, I have done a lot of visualization in my head that has not made it onto paper or anywhere else. I have some photos as inspiration, but it is not going to be the same at all as what those photos are. More just to give me ideas of how I can play with the structure of it. So I'm very curious to see how that goes. It's going to be an interesting journey, I think. Oh, well, I think we're just about nearing where I wanted to get with this, because I just wanted to get enough that I could make a bracelet. I have large wrists, so proportionally this is not going to look like it's enough for an entire bracelet. If you look from the side, this actually is probably enough to at least have made one bracelet in the time that we've been sitting here. Obviously, a large portion of these types of crafts comes down to just making the time to prep the material, but it's still nice to get to have something where I just put a ton of cording on these things, and then whenever I feel like kind of working on something like that, I can just pick up the piece and work on it. It doesn't take too much for me to get started and get rolling on it. And that's something that I value having the opportunity to do with a lot of my crafts. God damn you. And that's something that I value getting to do with a lot of my crafts. I don't want to have to prep everything. And today was a day where I just went, I do want to record something. I want to get to chat and hang out. And I don't want to be spinning up something new right now. I've been in the middle of sewing projects and other things. I don't want to have to now dig out, set up more, and wind up having to go back on this same like treadmill of having more things in progress. I like to finish the stuff as they come through, at least for each of the different kind of crafting types. And so this is something where it's just, let's get something done. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. Obviously, I need to trim off portions of this, but to finish it up, I just kind of glue a section first, then I'll cut through that glue later. And then I have some ribbon clasps, which you can usually buy at a lot of jewelry supply stores to be able to clasp the ends of it to create sections then that I can attach fasteners and other things to. And wind up with a bracelet. The crafting doesn't have to be crazy to just jump in and make stuff. If there are certain crafts that you want to see me working on, certainly let me know. Next is probably going to be jewelry making. I do have a little bit of sewing that I'm doing, but I don't think these projects I'll want to do that. I do have uh, a crochet project that I'm in the middle of that I'll probably record things, but not hold. I'll hold on to those videos until I'm done with that project, since that's as a gift. And I think uh, that who the gift is related to may end up watching these videos. So I guess we'll keep that as a mystery for whoever you might be. Uh, but that's a rather chunky project and it's been taking a lot of time. So it'd be nice to work on something different. There was a pattern some time ago that I was really interested in for a pillowcase because let's be real, I'm not super excited by these. I bought these originally for outdoor pillows and then didn't put them outdoors at all. Uh, and so I am a person who, with my crafts, I like going, what's the hardest thing to do? That way I'll just do that thing and then everything else will feel easier. So I'll suffer through whatever that activity is. Um, and so when it comes to crochet, there's a couple different concepts of what the worst stitch is. Uh, my experience of trying them out, the worst one is the jasmine stitch. I love how it looks though. It's stunning, but to maintain the right tension for it to line up correctly every time is very difficult. You're building a flower stitch using puff stitches, but you're carrying 3 puff stitches on your hook at a time, which means you're holding about 20 something stitches on your hook by the time that you're actually finally pulling through those loops. Uh, and that way you kind of close the set of threes. It's like 1, 2, 3. You want to close them. So it's like this. Then you're coming back and you have to stitch back in to fill in the last 2 petals of the flowers. Getting that to line up was not uh, a straightforward process to learn. So I'd be interested in, there's a pattern for making a pillow with one where it's like a squared section of that and then the rest is filled in around it. I'd probably make one just to flex that I can do it of the whole front panel of a pillow. So at some point, that's on the crafting docket. Uh, but that is a lower priority activity, doesn't have a deadline on it, so it probably won't happen for a little bit. But if there are ideas that you have out there of things that you'd like to see me do, certainly let me know, or just let me know what projects you're working on. If I wind up on your second monitor or in the background, would love to hear what you're up to and working on while I occupy the audio space in the, in the back. Either way, that's all for today. Thanks so much for listening and hanging out with me for a bit. Obviously, if it's something you enjoyed, subscribe and we'll have more videos coming out once a week of just hanging out. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye bye.